In the aftermath of World War II, the world did not transition into lasting peace. Instead, it entered a prolonged period of tension defined by rivalry, suspicion, and the constant anticipation of conflict. The Cold War quickly reshaped global dynamics, dividing nations into opposing ideological blocs led by the United States and the Soviet Union. This was not a conventional war. It was not defined by large-scale battles or territorial invasions, but by influence, intelligence, and strategic positioning. Power was measured not only in military strength, but in the ability to shape narratives, gather information, and anticipate the actions of an unseen enemy. Within this environment, intelligence agencies took on a new level of importance. Their responsibilities expanded beyond espionage to include psychological operations and experimental research. The goal was no longer simply to understand the enemy, but to outthink and outmaneuver them in every possible domain. Amid growing concerns about psychological warfare, a new and unsettling idea began to take hold. What if the human mind itself could become a target? What if thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors could be influenced or even controlled? Reports from captured soldiers, particularly during conflicts in Asia, suggested that individuals could be subjected to intense psychological pressure capable of altering their perspectives. Whether these reports were exaggerated or misunderstood, they contributed to a growing fear that the boundaries of warfare were shifting. In 1953, the Central Intelligence Agency authorized a program that would attempt to explore these possibilities. Known as MKUltra, it was designed to investigate methods of influencing human consciousness and behavior. What began as a defensive measure quickly evolved into a far-reaching and controversial research effort. MKUltra would operate in secrecy for decades, involving numerous institutions and a wide range of experimental techniques. When fragments of the program eventually became public, they revealed not only the ambition behind it, but also the ethical compromises that had been made. MKUltra stands as one of the most complex and controversial chapters in the history of intelligence operations. The creation of MKUltra was not the result of a single event, but rather the accumulation of fears that defined the early Cold War period. The United States faced an adversary that was not only militarily capable, but also ideologically opposed, creating a sense of uncertainty that extended into every aspect of national security. During the Korean War, several American prisoners of war made statements that appeared to support communist ideologies. These individuals participated in broadcasts, signed confessions, or expressed views that were interpreted as a rejection of their own country. To American officials, this behavior was deeply concerning. It suggested that enemy forces might have developed techniques capable of influencing or altering a person's beliefs. The term brainwashing became widely used, even though its scientific basis was unclear. In reality, many of these cases were likely the result of extreme conditions. Prisoners were subjected to isolation, physical hardship, and psychological pressure. Under such circumstances, individuals may adopt behaviors that differ significantly from their normal beliefs. However, at the time, these nuances were overshadowed by fear. Intelligence agencies were less concerned with understanding the exact causes and more focused on the potential implications. If psychological manipulation was possible, it represented a significant threat. This fear created a sense of urgency. The United States needed to understand these techniques, both to defend against them and to potentially use them as a strategic tool. This mindset contributed directly to the establishment of MKUltra. Rather than waiting for definitive evidence, the decision was made to act. The possibility of mind control, however uncertain, was enough to justify a large-scale research initiative. Once MKUltra was approved in 1953, it quickly evolved from a small intelligence initiative into a vast and highly secretive network of experiments. The program was placed under the direction of Sidney Gottlieb, whose influence would define its direction for years. From the beginning, the Central Intelligence Agency ensured that MKUltra operated under extreme secrecy. To avoid exposure, funding was not directly linked to the government. Instead, money was routed through foundations, front organizations and private intermediaries. This system allowed research to continue without revealing its true origin. As a result, many universities, hospitals, and laboratories became indirectly involved in the program. In most cases, the researchers had no idea they were working for an intelligence operation. They believed their work was purely scientific or medical, which made the system even more discreet and harder to detect. MKUltra was not a single project, but a collection of dozens of sub-projects. Each one explored a different aspect of human behavior. Some focused on chemical substances that could alter perception or emotion. Others studied hypnosis, memory disruption, or the effects of stress on decision-making. This fragmented structure gave the program flexibility, but also made it difficult to control. Different teams worked independently, often unaware of what others were doing. As a result, findings were inconsistent and rarely unified into a single framework. Despite this, the program expanded rapidly. The Cold War context created pressure to produce results quickly, even if the methods were experimental or unproven. Speed and secrecy were prioritized over caution and coordination. In many cases, the true purpose of experiments was hidden not only from the public, but even from the scientists involved. This lack of transparency allowed research to proceed without scrutiny, but it also meant that ethical boundaries were often unclear or ignored. Over time, MKUltra shifted from exploratory research into more ambitious attempts to influence human behavior directly. The idea was no longer just to understand the mind, but to find ways to shape it under controlled conditions. This structure, decentralized, secret, and loosely supervised, created an environment where experimentation could expand quickly, but without the safeguards that normally guide scientific research. Among the various methods explored within MKUltra, chemical experimentation became one of the most significant and controversial directions of research. At the center of this effort was a substance that would later become widely known outside scientific circles: LSD. Originally discovered in the 1940s, LSD was recognized for its extraordinary effects on perception, emotion, and cognition. Unlike many other compounds, it did not simply affect the body, it altered the way individuals experienced reality itself. Time perception could distort, sensory input could intensify or fragment, and the boundaries between thought and environment could dissolve entirely. For researchers involved in MKUltra, this made LSD an object of intense interest. If the goal was to understand whether the human mind could be influenced or controlled, then a substance capable of reshaping perception seemed like a potential key. The CIA was not necessarily interested in LSD as a conventional weapon, but rather as a tool to explore psychological vulnerability and suggestibility. Early experiments were designed to observe its effects under controlled conditions. Subjects were given varying doses while researchers documented changes in behavior, communication, and emotional stability. Particular attention was paid to whether individuals became more open to suggestion or more psychologically unstable under its influence. This created conditions where reactions were influenced not only by the drug itself, but also by confusion, fear, and lack of understanding about what was happening. The results of these studies were highly inconsistent. Some individuals experienced intense hallucinations, emotional breakdowns, or altered self-perception. Others became anxious, paranoid, or detached from reality. A smaller number appeared more susceptible to external influence, which initially encouraged further investigation. Despite these efforts, no consistent pattern of control emerged. The effects of LSD varied greatly between individuals, influenced by psychological background, personality, and external context. What produced a strong reaction in one subject might have little to no effect in another. Over time, it became clear that LSD did not provide a reliable method for influencing behavior in a controlled way. Instead of revealing a path towards psychological control, it exposed the complexity and unpredictability of human consciousness. Rather than demonstrating mastery over the mind, the experiments highlighted its resistance to uniform manipulation. The human psyche proved far more dynamic and individualized than researchers had anticipated, limiting the practical applications of chemical influence. One of the most controversial and ethically troubling aspects of MKUltra was the systematic use of individuals who had no knowledge that they were participating in experiments. Unlike traditional research, where participants are informed and give consent, many MKUltra subjects were unknowingly exposed to drugs, psychological stress, and experimental conditions. This approach was not accidental, it was deliberate. Researchers believed that awareness would alter behavior. If a subject knew they were part of an experiment, their reactions might be influenced by expectation or fear. By removing informed consent, researchers aimed to observe what they considered pure or authentic responses. Subjects came from a wide range of environments. University students were often selected because campuses provided easy access to large populations. Hospital patients, particularly those in psychiatric institutions, were also targeted, as they were considered less likely to question authority or report unusual experiences. In some cases, individuals from marginalized backgrounds were used because they were seen as less likely to attract attention. In addition to controlled environments, experiments were sometimes conducted in everyday settings. Individuals could be exposed to substances or psychological manipulation without realizing it, making the boundary between normal life and experimentation almost impossible to detect. The consequences of these practices varied widely. Some individuals experienced temporary confusion or distress, while others reported long-term psychological effects. These included anxiety, paranoia, memory disruption, and difficulty distinguishing between real and altered experiences. Because subjects were unaware of their involvement, they often had no framework for understanding what had happened to them. This lack of explanation could intensify the psychological impact, as individuals struggled to make sense of their experiences without context. The use of unwitting subjects represents one of the clearest examples of how MKUltra prioritized outcomes over ethics. It highlights the risks of conducting research without transparency and the potential harm that can result when individuals are treated as means to an end rather than as participants with rights. Beyond chemical experimentation, MKUltra expanded into a wide range of psychological and environmental techniques designed to alter human behavior without relying solely on drugs. The objective was to understand how external conditions could weaken mental stability and increase psychological vulnerability. One of the most studied methods was sensory deprivation. Individuals were placed in environments where external stimuli were drastically reduced or completely removed. These settings could include soundproof rooms, dark enclosures, or isolated chambers designed to eliminate visual and auditory input. Over time, the absence of stimulation began to affect perception, often leading to confusion or hallucination-like experiences. Sleep deprivation was another major area of focus. Subjects were kept awake for extended periods under controlled conditions. As sleep is essential for cognitive processing, memory consolidation, and emotional regulation, its removal had significant effects. Individuals exposed to sleep deprivation often experienced impaired judgment, irritability, and difficulty distinguishing between reality and perception. Isolation techniques were also frequently used. Human beings are inherently social, and prolonged separation from others can have profound psychological consequences. Subjects placed in isolation often reported disorientation, heightened anxiety, and a reduced ability to think clearly or make decisions. In many cases, these techniques were not used individually, but combined. Sensory deprivation could be paired with sleep deprivation, or isolation could be combined with chemical substances. The intention was to create layered conditions of stress that would amplify psychological instability. Researchers observed that under extreme conditions, the mind does not simply weaken in a linear way. Instead, it can enter unpredictable states where perception, memory, and emotional response become distorted. However, these states were highly inconsistent and varied greatly between individuals. While these experiments provided insight into human psychological limits, they also demonstrated a critical issue. Extreme pressure does not reliably produce control. Instead, it often results in breakdown, resistance, or chaotic mental responses that are difficult to predict or manage. As MKUltra progressed through its many sub-projects, researchers began to face a problem that could not be ignored. The human mind did not behave like a predictable system. Despite the variety of techniques used, drugs, stress, isolation, hypnosis, the results remained inconsistent and often contradictory. One of the most persistent issues was individual variability. Each subject responded differently depending on psychological background, emotional stability, and personal history. A method that appeared effective in one case could fail completely in another, even under nearly identical conditions. This made it extremely difficult to establish any reliable framework for control. Researchers attempted to identify patterns. They analyzed responses to different combinations of stress, chemical exposure, and environmental manipulation. However, instead of converging toward a clear model, the data revealed increasing complexity. The human mind did not simplify under pressure; it fragmented in unpredictable ways. Another major limitation was the temporary nature of many observed effects. Even when behavior or perception was altered during experiments, these changes often diminished once normal conditions were restored. This suggested that the mind has strong mechanisms of recovery and resistance. Some researchers hypothesized that deeper and more sustained interventions might produce longer-lasting effects. However, increasing intensity often led to breakdown rather than control. Subjects might become disoriented, unresponsive, or psychologically unstable, making further analysis difficult. These findings gradually challenged the original assumptions behind MKUltra. The idea that the mind could be systematically programmed or reshaped began to lose credibility within parts of the research community. Instead, influence appeared possible only in limited, unstable, and highly context-dependent forms. Ultimately, MKUltra revealed a paradox. The more aggressively researchers attempted to control the mind, the more unpredictable its responses became. Rather than uncovering a method of precision influence, the program exposed the fundamental resistance of human cognition to uniform manipulation. Secrecy was not just a protective layer within MKUltra. It was the very structure that allowed the program to exist. From its beginning, the entire operation was designed to function in fragmentation, isolation, and controlled ignorance. Within the Central Intelligence Agency, only a very limited number of individuals had access to the full scope of the project. This compartmentalized system meant that most researchers involved in MKUltra were only aware of their specific experiments. They did not see the broader framework or understand how their work connected to other sub-projects. This design reduced the risk of leaks, but it also eliminated meaningful oversight. Funding was deliberately obscured through a network of front organizations, private foundations, and indirect financial channels. These intermediaries acted as buffers between the government and the research institutions. As a result, universities and laboratories could receive funding without knowing its true origin. This structure allowed MKUltra to expand quietly across multiple institutions in the United States and beyond. Experiments were distributed, decentralized, and often disconnected from one another. While this made detection more difficult, it also made coordination nearly impossible. By the early 1970s, however, pressure on intelligence agencies began to increase. Political investigations, media scrutiny, and public distrust created an environment in which secrecy became harder to maintain. It was in this context that a critical decision was made. In 1973, large portions of MKUltra documentation were destroyed. These records included detailed experimental data, internal communications, and information about participants. The destruction was not accidental. It was a deliberate effort to limit exposure and prevent future investigation. The consequences of this action were significant. With the loss of primary documents, reconstructing the full scope of MKUltra became extremely difficult. What remains today is a fragmented collection of partial records and testimonies that offer only an incomplete view of the program. This absence of information has shaped how MKUltra is understood in the present day. Without full documentation, historians and researchers must rely on indirect evidence, which leaves gaps that may never be filled. As a result, uncertainty is an inherent part of the program's legacy. Secrecy initially allowed MKUltra to operate without interruption, but it ultimately created a historical void. What was meant to protect the program also ensured that its full story would remain permanently incomplete. The exposure of MKUltra did not occur in a single moment, but rather through a gradual process of investigation and political change during the 1970s. This period in the United States was marked by growing skepticism toward government institutions, largely due to a series of political scandals. One of the most significant of these was the Watergate scandal, which revealed extensive abuses of power at the highest levels of government. The scandal had a ripple effect, increasing public demand for transparency and accountability across all federal agencies. In response to this climate, the U.S. Senate established a special investigative body known as the Church Committee, led by Frank Church. The committee was tasked with examining intelligence operations and determining whether agencies had engaged in illegal or unethical activities. During these hearings, investigators began uncovering references to MKUltra. Although many official records had been destroyed, surviving documents and witness testimonies revealed that the CIA had conducted experiments involving psychological manipulation, chemical substances, and unwitting participants. These revelations were particularly significant because they confirmed that such activities had taken place under government authority, even if the full scope remained unknown. The idea that intelligence agencies had operated beyond effective oversight shocked both lawmakers and the public. Media coverage amplified the impact of the findings. MKUltra quickly became a symbol of hidden experimentation and government secrecy. However, because of the destroyed documentation, the public never received a complete account of what had occurred. This incomplete exposure created a dual reality. On one hand, enough evidence existed to confirm the existence of controversial practices. On the other, too much information was missing to fully understand their extent. This tension continues to define how MKUltra is interpreted today. The exposure of MKUltra triggered a fundamental reassessment of ethics in scientific research and government experimentation. At the center of this reassessment was the principle of informed consent, which became a cornerstone of modern research standards. MKUltra demonstrated what can happen when this principle is ignored or bypassed. Individuals were exposed to experimental conditions without knowledge of the risks or even awareness that they were part of a study. This raised serious ethical concerns about autonomy, consent, and human rights. In response to these revelations, the United States implemented stronger regulatory frameworks governing research involving human subjects. Institutional review boards were established to evaluate proposed studies and ensure compliance with ethical standards. These boards were tasked with assessing risk, ensuring transparency, and protecting participants from harm. The program also had a broader impact on public trust. The idea that government agencies could conduct secret experiments on civilians contributed to increased skepticism toward intelligence institutions. This mistrust did not disappear with time and continues to influence public perception today. Academically, MKUltra became a case study in ethical failure. It is frequently referenced in discussions about the importance of oversight, transparency, and accountability in both scientific and governmental contexts. The program illustrates how the absence of these safeguards can lead to harmful outcomes, even when objectives are framed as national security concerns. The consequences of MKUltra extend beyond policy changes. It also reshaped how society thinks about the relationship between knowledge and responsibility. It highlighted that the pursuit of understanding, particularly in areas involving human cognition, must always be balanced with ethical constraints. Although MKUltra was officially terminated, its legacy did not disappear with it. Instead, it slowly transformed into something larger than the program itself, a reference point for how far governments, science, and intelligence operations can go when secrecy, fear, and ambition collide. At the time of its creation, MKUltra was shaped by the Cold War mindset. The idea that survival depended on gaining any possible advantage led to experiments that crossed ethical boundaries. But its aftermath continues to raise a different kind of question. What happens when knowledge about the human mind becomes powerful enough to be used, but not always responsibly? Over the decades that followed, science advanced rapidly. Fields like neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and behavioral science began to map the brain with increasing precision. Today, researchers can observe neural activity, predict certain behavioral patterns, and better understand how memory, emotion, and decision-making function. These developments have led to major breakthroughs in medicine and mental health treatment, but they also raise new concerns. Unlike MKUltra, modern influence does not require secrecy or physical experiments in hidden laboratories. It can operate through data, technology, and digital systems that analyze behavior at scale. The question is no longer only about chemical or psychological manipulation, but also about how information itself can shape human decisions. Even though there is no verified evidence of programs identical to MKUltra operating today, the ethical questions it raised remain highly relevant. How much influence over human behavior is acceptable? Where is the line between understanding people and manipulating them? And who should be responsible for drawing that line? MKUltra is often studied today not just as a historical event, but as a warning. It shows how easily scientific curiosity can shift into experimentation without sufficient oversight when secrecy removes accountability. It also demonstrates that the pursuit of control over human behavior is far more complex than it first appears. One of its most important lessons is that knowledge itself is not neutral. The way it is used determines its consequences. Understanding the human mind can lead to healing and progress, but without ethical limits, it can also lead to harm and loss of trust. In modern discussions about technology, surveillance, artificial intelligence, and behavioral prediction, MKUltra continues to appear as a comparison point, not because the methods are the same, but because the underlying question is identical. How much should we be allowed to influence human thought? Ultimately, MKUltra's legacy is not defined by what it achieved, but by what it exposed. It revealed that the human mind is not easily controlled, but also that attempts to control it without restraint can have lasting consequences far beyond their original intent. MKUltra stands as one of the most controversial programs born in the early Cold War. It was shaped by fear, uncertainty, and the belief that survival required pushing science beyond its ethical limits. At its core, the program tried to answer a disturbing question. Could the human mind be understood well enough to be influenced or controlled? Every experiment was built around this idea. Drugs, psychological stress, isolation, and environmental manipulation were all explored in the hope of finding predictable results. But what MKUltra revealed was not control, it was complexity. The human mind did not behave like a system that could be programmed. Instead, it reacted differently in every case. Some methods produced temporary effects, others failed completely, and many created outcomes that were unstable or harmful rather than useful. When program was eventually exposed in the 1970s, through investigations like those led by Frank Church and the political aftermath of the Watergate scandal, it forced the public to confront what had been done in secrecy. Even though many records had been destroyed by the Central Intelligence Agency, enough information remained to reveal serious ethical violations and the use of unwitting subjects. The consequences were significant. New laws and ethical standards were introduced to protect human subjects in research. Oversight systems were created to prevent similar abuses in the future. End quote. MKUltra became a turning point in how governments and institutions approach experimentation involving human beings. MKUltra does not end with a story of mastery over the mind. It ends with the opposite lesson. The human brain is not easily reduced, not easily predicted, and certainly not easily controlled without consequences. Its true legacy is a warning that the pursuit of knowledge, when separated from ethics and accountability, can lead to outcomes that outlive the intentions that created them. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing.